Hello everyone, so now we're going to be talking about trying to get a good quality cannula into someone's vein. When we're doing this, we're going to need to really look across the arm, sorry to bore your arm, to see if there are any veins that we can see or feel already to get a good idea of what's going on with it. And I can see on Tina's hand she's got some lovely, nice, straight veins on her hand. So what I'm going to do in order to make sure I can find is put a tourniquet on. And we talked about tourniquets last time, about how to get them on, how they can be a bit awkward. And so we're just going to show you how to do that now. So what I would do is make sure I put my tourniquet over my hand in that position, and then I can pinch the tourniquet between my thumb and my forefinger. And then I'm going to place the tourniquet around Tina's arm, and I'm going to stretch it first, and then wrap it, maintaining the stretch throughout, and then just clip it on there. I can then take my fingers out from underneath, and they were underneath to protect her from any pinching. If I then look over Tina's hand, I can then see if I can see any veins that are building up and engorging with the pressure of all that extra venous blood in them. And I can see here that she's got some veins just here. What's an important thing to do is when you're actually looking for some veins is to really think about how it is when you stretch the skin, so in the position when you're actually going to be putting the cannula in. And I can see it's a nice straight vein. I can see it and I can feel it, which is a really, really good vein. If I couldn't see it but could still feel it, it's still a really good vein. It's got plenty of pressure in the vein to resist my needle. So I would be able to get a needle in it, but I just need to be very careful where I'm aiming for. If I could see it but can't feel it, then it's just no point putting the cannula in. You wouldn't bother doing that if you were desperate, but hopefully we won't be. I want to be able to feel the vein, feel along exactly where I'm going to go, and when I'm happy with where I'm going to stretch the skin again, make sure I know exactly what it feels like, and then I've selected my really good vein. You are more than welcome to give it a little gentle tap, just to cause some vasodilation, and then you can see you've got a lovely straight vein just here to go for. I'm going to release the tourniquet because I don't want Tina's arm to fall off, and that can be a bit of an awkwardness, and you can try and release the tourniquet one-handed, and then you can just do it like that, and then it just comes off one-handed. And you're done. Thank you very much. So when you're picking your place where you want to go, we generally want to, the rule is for cannulation, we want to go as peripheral as possible. So we'd always start to look at the hand and then work our way up. But you have to base that on the person's medical condition and what you're going to be putting through the cannula and all those different things, and to try and get the cannula to last as long as possible. And I'll let Tina talk about what happens when cannulas sometimes go wrong.
So there's 3 different types of phlebitis. And we categorise them into mechanical, infective and chemical. So I'll talk a little bit about mechanical there. Tom was obviously talking about positioning of the cannula. We like the hand, tends to move quite nicely. Mechanical is caused when the cannula is in the vein, and that movement can cause like a rubbing against the vein itself and causes a histamine release, which causes swelling, which will eventually occlude that cannula. So if you think about if you started up here, if you put a cannula in here, patients tend to move that quite a lot, and that in itself can cause mechanical phlebitis. And it's just that general movement. So every time somebody flushes the cannula, it moves. Patients have a tendency to have a fiddle with their cannulas as well.
Yeah, they wiggle them. They don't know what cannula is.
So we can avoid that by finding the right position firstly. And we can have one of these needle-free connectors, where every time we have to access the cannula, giving drugs, flushing it, we use this.
So we connect this end to the cannula itself, and then this end is the end that we connect the syringe to, or the infusion line, whatever. So this moves and the cannula stays still, so that doesn't wiggle inside the vein. So that's patient moving their limb, us moving it, and what else? Oh, when the patients, because patients aren't medical experts, so sometimes they'll be poking them and fiddling them. So we've got a lovely saying we like to say to patients once we put the cannula in, and that is...
Don't touch it, keep it dry.
Keep it clean.
Keep it clean, keep it dry.
Don't play with it. So say that to patients, just nicely though.
Don't touch it.
Yeah. So that's mechanical phlebitis.
The second one we've got to think about is infective phlebitis. In this trust we have a scoring system, the VIP score, that the nurses tend to do, I think, twice a shift. If they've got a 12-hour shift, where they look at the cannula and see if there's any signs of infection. If there is, they have to remove that cannula and site a new one. Our trust, I think, is 72 hours the maximum that a cannula stays in.
Which isn't the current evidence.
But that's what we obviously adhere to. There is exceptional circumstances, those patients that are maybe difficult to cannulate, that have had to have an ultrasound, guided cannulation, all those kind of things. And they're the patients that if there is exceptions to that rule, it will be documented. And that's the way that we can avoid that. And it's obviously where you insert the cannula, making sure you use the 2% wipes to prevent that infection, and by telling the patient not to touch it as well. They do have tubey grips that we can put over a cannula, which should prevent infection. And also the dressing itself, they keep it dry. I think the moisture can be released, but nothing can get in. That's right, isn't it? So all those things.
Putting it on properly, really is important.
If there's any signs of infection, just take that cannula straight out. Another form of phlebitis is chemical phlebitis. It's quite interesting. It's what we're actually putting into the cannula. Our sort of pH, we've talked about pH, isn't it? Is 7.2.
7.35, 7.45. 7.2 is neutral.
That's neutral, so sorry. So when we're looking at putting drugs into cannulas, the nurses have a Medusa book. It's where all the drugs are, and it tells exactly what their pH is. So, for example, I think, is it acyclovir has a pH of
11?
Yeah. And there's another one that has a pH of 1.9.
Doxycycline.
So that in itself will irritate the vein massively. So it's being aware of what you're going to put through that cannula. So if you know that you're going to put something like amiodarone, which is also quite irritant to the vein, we would say a small cannula in a large vein to prevent that phlebitis and to prevent good blood flow around the cannula. Or just get that good blood flow around the cannula. If you know you're going to give some strong antibiotics, like some of the ones we talked about, again, it's important if you think about the size of the cannula, getting it in a big vein so we don't cause that irritation. And things like vancomycin, gentamicin are all quite irritant.
We'd really want them in a small cannula, in a large vein, so that we can have a lot of blood flow around it all. So other things to think about as well is, then when we're thinking about all those different positions of putting the cannula in, is they all say where we're going to be putting the cannula in. So if I was going to be giving someone a nasty, harsh drug like vancomycin, I probably wouldn't put it in the back of the hand, because then the cannula would be very close to the sides of the vein. You'd get a lot more chemical phlebitis. So we'd probably site it slightly higher up towards the ACF in a bigger vein with more blood flow. But you also need to think about as well then the condition of the patient. So if the patient was the average patient in the hospital and they needed some fluids and maybe some small, simple medications, we might think about putting in a smaller cannula, like a blue cannula, which is a 22 gauge cannula. This cannula allows for 2.5 litres an hour of fluid to just drip through under gravity, which is actually quite a lot of fluid to put through to give someone in an hour, but it doesn't go through very quickly. If someone was coming in and they were heavily bleeding, or they were really unwell in cardiac arrest, or severely, really unwell, you might think about putting a larger cannula in the person so you can get that 2.5 litres through in 10 minutes. So we'd want to put in a bigger cannula then. Then if we were going to put in a bigger cannula, we wouldn't put it in here because it's too small. We might decide we're going to put the cannula up here more towards the ACF. So it all depends about what you're going to be doing with the patient. What drugs are you going to be giving the patient? What medications and treatment? What is the condition of the patient? And so that denotes really what size cannula you're going to put in and what position you're going to be putting it in. A base rule to really think about is we really want to put the smallest cannula we can get away with into a patient.
Not go large or go home.
Yeah, not go large or go home. That's not the rule.